Hi, my name is Elizabeth Garrow. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for 3ds Max Design, and I'm here with Kelsey Simpson, Senior Product Designer for 3ds Max and 3ds Max Design. Welcome to our Facecast. We are live from Autodesk University here in Las Vegas, and today we're going to tell you about Project Geppetto, which is about the creation and animation of crowds into architectural scenes into a very fun and easy way. So for those who are creating visualizations of architectural scenes, like buildings or public spaces, imagine if you could actually enrich your scenes with realistic human figures. Well, this is what Geppetto does, and this has several advantages. The first one I see is that you can actually get a sense of scale, by adding animated crowds inside or outside buildings or public spaces. It gives you this sense of scale. And the second advantage is really it brings your scene to a higher level of realism. And more than realism, I think that adding animated crowds actually bring emotion. And for me, that's really what 3ds Max Design is about creating an emotional impact, and that's what you need, especially when you need to sell your design or tell the story of the design. And the last advantage is probably to help you make better design decisions. And I was thinking, Autodesk University would be a perfect case study for that, because there are hundreds of people coming out in or coming out rooms at the same time, or all merging in the same direction, for example, for the keynote. And Project Geppetto would be, perfect illustration of the way you could actually visualize those crowds' movement in advance and get a sense about how people fit into the space and how they occupy the scene. Another important thing about Project Geppetto and what makes it very different from everything that has been done before is the ease of use. It's fun and it's intuitive. It's based on creating geometric shapes. So it's as easy as designing paths or sidewalks or hallways, and then Geppetto does the rest for you, and it fills those spaces with animated crowds. So I think this is particularly relevant for AutoCAD users. So you need 3ds Max or 3ds Max Design in order to make Geppetto work. But you could actually create your scene into AutoCAD and bring your file into 3ds Max Design. And you don't need to be an animator, you don't need to be a 3ds Max expert, because it's really as simple as creating geometric shapes. So now let's have a look at a couple of examples of things you can actually do with Project Geppetto.
So this is actually an example of that we've posted to labs with the Autodesk Labs, and this shows creating a shape.
So just hold it up here.
And this shape is just created right in the scene, and then another shape is created to subtract from the first shape. And you see the little markers on the shape. This is where the people will appear once you run the simulation. So you can create circular shapes, you can create freeform shapes by drawing irregular shapes, rectangle squares, and then you see we're just sliding on the sliders, the density of the people we want. We can see the markers change, and sliding whether we want people to stand in groups or whether we want them to stand as singles. And these people now just stand and sort of mingle around, and you can create different sections. Some people are idling and just sort of standing and mingling, and other people are walking. And the walking is just as simple as creating a line. So you draw out this line and click it out. You can make it turn corners, and you can cross them and create intersections. And you can select points on the lines and move them around, and just sort of like creating roads moving through space in your environment. And the people will automatically navigate them. And they have very realistic agile behaviors. They avoid each other. They can slow down and speed up to pass, and when they come to intersections, you don't have to worry about any kind of creating any of these behaviors. All of this stuff is provided, and you just lay these down and you get very realistic and plausible human motion. So there's not going to be anything that's sort of distracting about, you know, legs sliding or things that you see typically when you try to animate characters. You can, the motion is based on real human motion that's been captured as a motion capture and fed into the database for Geppetto, and then that motion is used to derive the actual behaviors of the people. So this is something that can be expanded. The more motion data that we add to Geppetto, the more behaviors and the more realism that we can achieve here. So this is something that we'd be very interested in getting more feedback on labs about. What kind of behaviors we would like to see. You can see there's a freeform shape being created here on the roof, and just dragging up the density and some of the spread settings for the people that will appear there, and then just being able to modify this area, which is just using a tool that works sort of like a magnet. So you draw like a brush and it just sort of pulls the shapes around. So this is one of the things that is kind of cool about this, is it makes it very flexible. You change your design of your environment and then you can just grab the magnet and kind of pull around the areas where the people are to reflect the changes that you've just made and see the difference in the result immediately after you simulate again. So that's about as you can see it's computing the characters now. And now we see the new behaviors. So this is kind of a result, and this is what you see in the viewport. And then you can style the characters, you can assign materials, and as labs evolves, you'll see, you know, perhaps different ways of creating different appearances for the people. And that's one of the things that we'd like to get feedback on too, is what you need the people to look like, and whether they're stylized or realism. We also have Evolver involved in the People Power, which is a bigger project, and that's something that we're looking forward to integrating with Geppetto, and perhaps adding much more realism for the variety of the types of people that you could get inside of Geppetto. So you could have lifelike scenarios in different cultures and different environments with different types of clothing and things like that.
So are we getting some live questions, Chris?
Well, we have a lot of live viewers, but no questions yet. So if you're watching us online on Facebook, go ahead and just chat your question in the chat box below the video screen. But in the meantime, we do have a few questions that we've gotten here around AU. So you've talked about human beings, but does Geppetto work with animals? I'm a dog lover myself.
Want to take this one?
Yeah, Geppetto does not work with animals right now. What we have on labs is just the people, but it is data driven, and so that's one thing that's kind of important to see, is the data that we're providing is human beings, their geometry of people, men and women, and the data that provides the behavior is motion capture from human beings. There's nothing to say that it couldn't work that way, that we couldn't, provide data with other types of geometry or other types of behavior. But this is really based on populating scenes with crowds of people. So that's our focus on this right now. But based on the feedback that we get on, Autodesk Labs, if that's something that lots of other people are interested in, we would love to hear about it.
Okay, that's great. And another question, can I use Project Geppetto with AutoCAD?
So actually you need to have either 3ds Max or 3ds Max Design to make Geppetto work. But if you're an AutoCAD user, you can totally bring your AutoCAD file into 3ds Max or 3ds Max Design and create and animate your crowd. And because it is very easy to use, you don't need to be an animator, you don't need to be a 3ds Max or 3ds Max Design expert in order to create and animate your own crowd. So I totally encourage you to try it. And So maybe if you purchase AutoCAD as part of a premium suite, maybe you already have 3ds Max Design on your machine. If you don't, you can download the free trial and then go on Autodesk Labs to download the project Geppetto.
Great, great. And so there's a question here on Facebook about how do we change the people? So there's some tools built into Geppetto to change the characters, right?
To change the way that they look. This is something that Evolver is going to help us do, and that was one of the things I was talking about. So in the Labs release, that's something that is not quite up on Labs yet, but we have announced Evolver's involvement with People Power. So that's our next step, is to provide an interface for you to randomize, and that's something that we want to put to the cloud, so that we have lots of options for the types of crowds that you could create.
Great. And Charles here is asking if there's a limit on the number of people you can include into your scene.
You know, that's a good question. I haven't hit the limit. Obviously, the more people you have in the scene, the more you're going to have, performance requirements and things like that, depending on which renderers you're using or what your video cards are. But I have not hit the limit, so I really don't know the answer to that question.
All right. And so there's other crowd simulation software out there. What's the difference between those and what's offered in Project Geppetto?
Well, Project Geppetto right now is more of a visualization tool than a simulation tool at the moment, and we're not really talking about any future plans for here, but one of the things that we would like to do is hear some feedback on what people would like to see Project Geppetto do. Well, the idea for what we've posted on Labs as a first step is to more visualize people in a space and create plausible human motion that's not distracting from your environment, but more adding life and realism, and getting your clients or your, any of your whoever's viewing the walkthrough of the animation more engaged in the scene. And so that's the first step for us.
Cool, cool. And Jay is asking if there's a limit to what geometry that people can interact with. Because
it's data-driven, the limit is really based on the data. So that's one thing that we would like to get feedback on, is what kind of objects do we want to interact with, because we just introduced people sitting on chairs, and that is based on the data that we've captured of people interacting with chairs, and that what happens is that data trains the members of Geppetto, and once they've been trained to interact with chairs, they can, and when they come up to a chair, they can they know what to do. So the more data we have, the more objects they can interact with. So that's one of the things we would like to hear from you, is what kinds of stuff, because that's something that we can definitely, we can do anything we provide.
Just have to get that feedback.
Yeah.
So is it possible to put different faces on people and decide whether you want a male or a female and different body types?
Yeah, so this is what we were talking about. This is what Evolver is about. So this is not directly into Geppetto, but Geppetto is part of a larger scope project. So Geppetto focuses on behavior and motion, but we are of course taking into consideration, how to make people look different and different colors of skins, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And can you remind everyone how they get Geppetto?
Yeah, so the good news is that it's free for now, because it's an early stage research project. So you can go on autodesk.com/labs, Autodesk Labs. Just Google Project Geppetto inside Autodesk Labs, and then you can download it for free. But you need to install 3ds Max and 3ds Max Design as well.
Right. So to be clear, this is a plugin for 3ds Max?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. We have another question online. Let's see. The moves of people we create in Geppetto, can they be read within 3ds Max?
Can they be read?
I'm assuming since it's a plugin, it's all part of 3ds Max at that point, right?
Well, you're not actually creating moves for people. You are just creating the areas where people are. and people behave naturally in those areas. So you create an idle area, just like drawing a shape, and you create areas where people can move. You know, idle areas, people are not walking, they're standing still. They're moving, but they're talking to each other and things like that. And then the locomotion areas are just like drawing out a path. And so you draw paths down the center of the lobby or through the airport, and that's all it takes. You're not creating any moves for people. All of that's done based on the data that's provided with Geppetto, so it's automatic.
Don't we have a library of different animations or different behaviors that Geppetto plays with?
That is all internal. That is part of the data, yes.
Okay.
Cool. And does Geppetto plug into any other products, or is it just 3ds Max?
It's just 3ds Max at the moment,
3ds Max and Max Design.
and Max Design.
All right. So all of you watching today who are our AutoCAD fans, be sure to upgrade to the Autodesk Design Suite.
Yeah,
You get
yeah.
3ds
I want
Max Design.
to add that actually it works with 3ds Max or 3ds Max Design, but you can bring a DWG file or Revit file from Revit or AutoCAD into 3ds Max. So I mean that would be the workflow.
We have a great comment online. He says, "Sorry, I'm trying to find a serious question, and all I can think of is, that's so cool. Can I make two armies clash in my project?"
Yeah, right now we're focusing on populating, public spaces with crowds that are doing, pedestrian behaviors. But I suppose that there's nothing really stopping us from creating armies that fight if that becomes in very high demand.
That's great. And is Geppetto only available on the Windows platform, or is there anything for a Mac, or actually we were asked about iOS or any other platform?
Well, 3ds Max is currently only on the PC right now, so that's a limitation of to use the Geppetto plugin. You need Max.
But and could you actually, if you have 3ds Max working with Bootcamp,
You can.
would that work?
I have seen
Yeah.
people do it. I have not done it myself, but I have seen it happen.
All right. Well, I think that's about all the questions we have. So thanks, you guys. This has been
Thank you.
fantastic. And thanks for all of you who've been watching our
Yeah.
Facecast live from AU. This one wraps it up. So we will see you next year from AU. All right. Take care.